if I'm having trouble with the drag, one option I have, particularly if I notice Colby's knees are within distance here, I get my frame, I try to get my shoulder on top when I can again. Typically now, I can do a knee tap myself. Colby can knee tap me from here, but I can also have a modified knee tap from here. Now, why would I do that? If I'm controlling this arm, and I can block this knee, and I can drive him over those 2 points of control, you ought not to have a post to be able to recover, at least before I hypothetically be able to get on top of him. So, what I'm going to do from this position is I'm going to reach to his knee, or actually at the lower part of his quadricep here. I'm just going to make my arm straight, palm down. What I'm going to do from now is I'm going to torque very hard along this axis here. I'm not going to try to turn my body to the side. I'm going to try to stay spine lined up, my spine lined up with Colby's spine, and rotate along that axis. So I'm up here, I reach, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to roll hard, keeping us lined up in this position here. Once I get him over, I'm going to come around and I keep my head to his chest. Typically, I can either come up top, or if he turns away, I sag. That's the most opportune time, of course, to come up top. But if he turns into me, I post with my head, and I keep my shoulder on his shoulder, preventing him from coming all the way over on his hips. If I loosen up on his shoulder, he can get a shoulder through, no problem for him. But as long as my shoulder remains pinning his shoulder here, and my head blocks him here, he ought not to be able to get his back up and his chest down to get a very favorable position. Typically I can come up top now, or if he turns the other way, that's the most advantageous time to try to come up on top. Now, this is how I don't like to do it. Notice, if this line on the mat is pretty much how we're lined up here, kind of lined up here. I don't want to block Colby's knee and then try to cheat and get an angle here. Okay? Can you kind of see at this position now, my spine and Colby's spine are not lined up with each other. Here it is. Okay, if we're using this as the imaginary line, presumably in line with our spines. I don't want to try tapping here and trying to get this position and kind of like bowling through. What I want to do is knee tap here, and I want to rotate down on this arm, and I want to come up on the shoulder. The shoulder comes down, this shoulder goes up. So my body is coming this way here. As opposed to trying to dump him or shuck him down in this position. So from here, I'm going to block to this position. I keep my head down, I'm going to come up top. Sometimes in this position, I'm in tight here. If I can reach to this position, I can do the same type of thing. Instead of blocking it on this side here, if I come through, I can do the same type of attack, and I'm just going to roll the same kind of way. To the side, block with the head, and come around. Sometimes, if that's difficult, and I can just get to this position there, you'll notice I loaded Colby up on the side here. We're fighting here. If I can get to this position right here by loading him up, I can just drive pretty much through. Now if he hold on tight, I still always want to come towards the head and then come around. I'm in this position. I get my frame, my weight is back, my head is up. I may try to drag. We're kind of fighting along in here. If I see I can get through to here, I'll pop my head through to this position. I'm going to drive from here because I have good control. I'm blocking this leg here. I can come straight down. I don't have to get real perpendicular. In other words, I don't have to get from here and to try to get to here to do that. And in fact, I don't think that's as efficient. Why? because when we go over the riding techniques I'm going to show, I think that's somewhat dangerous. If somebody squares up with me here and they can't pull my wrist down or they can't pull my arm down and I get in this position, I'm going to have a good advantage. And again, we'll go over that position. So when I grab, and it's not a fireman's carry per se, but it's kind of like that position in terms of having arm control and reaching inside the leg. All I'm trying to do is jam his weight up on that, and at the same time, that rolling situation roughly along the axis of my spine. A somewhat similar situation in terms of the knee tap or coming through on the leg is, instead of when Kobe has me in head and arm, sometimes your opponent will simply just have this position. I lock this down, I keep my head up. I want to really concentrate on keeping my neck bowed here because I don't want him pulling me down and forward. I keep his arm forward here. When I can knee tap here, or I can do that same type of power in here to get this position here and then come down. And then come around to the side. There's no real difference in those techniques. It's just my opponent has an underhook on one situation and has a head and arm in the other situation. But as you can kind of see, his basic arm position in terms of his tricep, where you're going to be grabbing it, is pretty much the same. One distinction: when you grab the underhook, control it and pinch it with your bicep and tricep. From here, from this position. Again, trying to keep my weight on top of his shoulder. This position here. Head down, coming around, or alternatively, working hand control. Do this position here. I just dive in here and then down here. And then finish up. Sometimes when you're controlling that underhook position, especially if I can really pull my shoulder on top of my opponent's shoulder, or I can pull him so that his body is going further over me this way, there's a tendency for them to kind of get lazy with their arm or their hand and to leave that over my body. So from here, I'm going to be pulling this in tight. I try to keep my frame. If I feel this coming through here, I'm going to grab the elbow, above the elbow, and just lock it. And I'm going to roll, and I'm going to go again along the axis of my spine. This position here. When I get to this position, I'm going to continue on around. Kobe has me in an underhook here. I try to maintain my frame as best I can. I might be fighting harder to get better and better position here. If I feel that this gets, and again, if he comes out to the side here, I don't want this position here. I'm going to try to square off with him. As soon as I feel this get a little lazy here, now look, if he keeps his elbow chintzy, which he should be doing, I can't do this. But if I feel this elbow get a little lazy, I'm going to grab and come down to this position here. And I'm going to continue on top. Remember, offensively, we talked about always wanting to keep our elbows in and back so our opponent can't grab them. Defensively, if I notice my opponent starts getting lazy with those elbows, hangs them over my body, I'm going to attack and roll. And when I roll, don't think of grabbing tight and then rolling. It's at the same time. Because once I lock up, my opponent knows what I'm doing. So when I'm almost starting the roll as I lock up here tight, and I'm not so concerned about like locking it here, just so much as pinching it to my body as I roll. So don't think of it lock up and roll. Typically then your opponent's going to respond, and it makes the roll more difficult. So as soon as I see that or feel that hangover, and you have a sense of that after a while when you've worked this position, boom, right away. Hand comes down as the body rotates along the spine's axis. So I feel this here, I'm going to grab right to this position here, then I'm going to come around.